I think we're getting caught up. And by the way, it's great to see you both.
Good, great to see you as well.
Are you having a blast?
I love this. Actually, I do love this event. I'm ready to go home, but
you had a blast.
I had a blast. I generally maybe stay for the first day of drills and then go home and watch the rest because at that point my job is done.
Right.
This year is kind of the same. I'm getting out this afternoon and watching on the plane. I think we're stuck in this idea that it's got to be a binary decision, either Justin or Caleb. And if you, for example, like Drake May or like Jaden Daniels, it would take massive stones. Imagine the haul you could get if you traded Justin and let's say you move down to 2 because I bet you Washington would give you a nice return, but you have to be as confident as one can be because your career, not just your job, your career is on the line in all likelihood. If you were to go down and take one of the other quarterbacks.
You got to love them, though.
You got to love them.
Whoever you draft, whichever scenario is executed, he's got to be right.
Well, you can't be wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't be wrong.
You can't be wrong.
And it's easy to say, but it's the reality.
You can be wrong picking a quarterback at 20.
Right.
Now, it's not good, but you can be wrong. You could say, oh, well, the other 4 were there. We took a swing, whatever. You can't be wrong at 1.
I want to ask you this, and I think Waddle is interested in this as well. We've talked about this ad nauseum, and I think most of the fans want this to be wrapped up. I know a lot of us want this to be wrapped up. This has been a huge national story, too, because it has so much it affects the top of the draft. It affects Caleb Williams is a big story as well. How big is it nationally as far as what the Bears are doing?
It is only now picking up steam this week. Just because, look, the Super Bowl is the Super Bowl, and that will dominate the national conversation, and then everyone's kind of hung over collectively for a week, and then, not that we didn't do this topic on our shows, but I know Total Access last week just blew it out every night because there's not a lot more to do. We get here to the Combine. Whether or not he talks tomorrow, I have no idea. We'll see. I think he's going to talk. And then that becomes, the next cycle here. But when Ryan yesterday or 2 days ago said, hey, we got to do right by Justin if we decide to move on, and he'd like it done before free agency, I would just say look at the calendar. Free agency really opens on Monday the 11th, right? The trade last year, I believe, was on the Thursday or Friday before free agency. So it's coming, you would hope, eventually.
Well, I've described it as a win-win-win to do this sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
It's a win for the Bears. It's a win for whatever team they dance with because you can get him implemented and get things started and get your own situation set. And it's a win for Justin, who wants to know where he's going sooner rather than later.
I think he would deserve that answer.
Absolutely.
Like, if you want to truly do right by him. I also think, though, and I know you guys have probably said this, the part that I think some Bears fans are missing, and maybe not, tell me that I'm wrong, is that if you do decide to stick with Justin, which is fine, if you decide to do that, are you ready to pay him? Because he is entering year 4, right? So Herbert, Burrow last year, the year before that it was Kyler a couple of years. You get my point. Heading into year 4 is when you pay your quarterback, generally speaking, who you took in the first round.
Jalen Hurts got paid.
Jalen Hurts got paid. He was a second-round pick. They had to do that a year earlier.
Right.
The only one that really didn't do it was Miami with Tua. That was different. It was an outlier, the concussions, whatever. Now they're going to pay him this year heading into year number 5, and he's not going to play on the tag. Justin is heading into year number 4. Are you ready to make a 9-figure guarantee to him right now? And you're shaking your head. And to me, that's the question that's not asked. You can say, I still love Justin, and I think the ceiling is high, and I want to stick with him. I don't know what Justin's representatives think on the other side of it, but it is going to come time, like now or next summer, that you're going to have to pay him. And the floor is Daniel Jones. That, just wrap your head around that number. That's going to be the minimum, right? So like 40 a year, the cap just went up. All the numbers will go up with that cap. So Joe Burrow got 55. The next quarterback contract is going to start with a 6 annually. Well, like Mahomes redoes his deal, it's going to start with a 6. Justin Fields' contract would start with a 4. Are you ready to do that right now? Because if you trade the pick, you're not just sticking with your girlfriend. You are getting married.
Yeah, and I think that is a huge part of the equation about why they want to trade Justin Fields.
To reset the money.
Reset the money, and I don't think that's the only thing. I think that's what a lot of people have leaned on. But let me gather this. To sum up, you're saying that you would do both. You would trade Justin Fields, and you would possibly trade down to 2 to also get a haul and to pick a new quarterback.
I'm taking Caleb Williams.
Okay.
I think.
Oh, you
that's what I would do.
Just threw your curveball.
No.
You totally head faked us.
No. I would take Caleb Williams. But what I'm saying is there are other ways to look at it that I don't think everyone is playing 3D chess and looking at the out. There's a door 3 here, and that if they truly love Drake May or Jaden Daniels or J.J. McCarthy, whatever, whomever, like there is that route as well, and I think we're stuck in this conversation that it's a binary decision, comparing this quarterback to that quarterback. This guy's better. This guy paints his fingernails. I don't care, and we need to get out of that lane.
Let's go back to like you said, the Bears have to make that decision financially.
Yeah.
The dance partner they're looking for is also going to have to make that decision. And do you believe that could be a roadblock for making a deal for Justin? You've got to find a team, because if you're going to give up, just arbitrarily pick a second-round pick.
Okay.
You're going to give up a second-round pick for Justin, and are you going to pick up his fifth-year option? Now, it gives you some time, but it's still a financial commitment. And how many teams do you believe are going to be willing even to just pick up the fifth-year?
So it's a great question. I think the fifth-year thing is May 2nd, so that's coming soon. I think a team that trades for him, it is a much easier conversation to have with Justin and his reps. We're going to pick up. I think yes, you take the fifth-year option automatically.
Right.
That's what the Panthers did when they traded for Sam Darnold.
Right.
I was on the record, like when we reported it. I think I said to Ian on the air, why? Like, why would you do this? Like, you're trading for him. You don't need to pick up the fifth-year option. He's like, well, you're trading for him. Like, it's a show of good faith. I'm like, I don't know that he's going to be any good there, but they did. So I think they would.
I'm with
and
you.
That is the show of good faith.
I feel the same way about, like, I wouldn't. And I know I'm in the 1%. Yes, I wouldn't.
So it's what, 24?
23 and change.
Yeah.
Like, people even saying, well, if you keep Justin, you have to pick up his – I would be like, no, I don't.
See, but think about that. If you don't pick up his
plays
fifth-year option, by trading away the pick – like, you are saying, I believe in this guy. But by the way, I'm not going to – I don't know yet about year 5. Like, how do you have that intellectually?
This is why I think the trade is more difficult, because if you're wondering whether or not he's worth picking the fifth-year option on, then you're wondering whether or not he's worth trading for. And that's why I think there are fewer dance partners out there than many could have projected several weeks ago.
I think if you are not in position to get one of the top guys, okay, then Justin Fields is a darn good option if you need a quarterback. Let's say you're the Patriots.
And if you feel that way, Andrew, then you're going to pick up that fifth-year option for sure.
Yes. And it's not – I say it's not that much money. Compared to what you would have to pay someone in a long-term deal, it's not that much money.
Right.
I mean, that's a reasonably cheap in these days.
It's so funny because it gets complicated because the dominoes then begin to fall. Like, you trade for him, you pick up his fifth-year option. Of course his people are going to start talking. They want an extension. Well, but how married are you?
You buy the year.
Yeah.
So you're basically saying, hey, we'll lock in 24 in 24 or in 25.
Yeah.
And then you're our guy, but you're also kind of holding the right to change your mind next year. And if you do, after a year ago, he's not the guy, then it's 1 year and 24. You could work with it. You're not going to get much of a return. You're not going to get the same return on your investment if you try to move him after a year, but it's not the end of the world. Yeah. It's only a 1 year deal.
This is what, and we're talking to Andrew Siciliano from the NFL Network. It's Waddle and Sylvie at the Combine. We have debated this, too, and it's what you brought up about Drake May maybe at 2 and maybe trading down. If they evaluate Drake May, and they love Drake May, exactly the picture you painted, do you trade down for him, or do you take him at number 1?
I would trade. I mean, why not? I mean, do to someone what the Niners did to you for Trubisky.
How do you know that the Commanders don't love him too?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how depends if you want to believe Adam and Cliff. I don't know. I mean, everyone assumes Cliff wants him.
Because I would trade down too, but Waddle gives us that scenario what if they're screwing with you?
It's always dangerous.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a philosophy. If you believe him, just hand in the darn card. However, you stand to make a lot of money. I mean, money. You stand to get a lot back if you were to make that move.
You talked about nationally this story just kind of coming to a head now. It hasn't been the focal point because of the Super Bowl and other. What do you if you're reading the market, what is consensus right now in the NFL universe about what the Bears will do?
Take Caleb and trade Justin.
Yeah. Like there's not a whole lot of noise on the other side.
It just makes too much sense. I mean, if you're getting a generational prospect.
Do you think he's a generational prospect?
Look, I live in L.A. I watch SC every week. They give up 50 and they have no O-line. Like, he's running nothing is done in structure. Yes, he does like to hold the ball for a while and wait for stuff to come open downfield. But they give up 50. The DC got fired. Like, the O-line's a disaster. He has to play hero ball. Now, he's got a lot of weapons, and he's got maybe one of the top 2 backs in this draft, and Marshawn Lloyd as well. So it's not as if he doesn't have toys to play with. But, like, if you put him at Washington with those 3 wide receivers, and again, they have a lot of talent there, I think we might be viewing him differently about whether or not he could play in schedule. I really like him a lot. I would be less concerned about whether he wants to play in Chicago, and a little more concerned with just the
is maturity an issue with him?
I think he's mature. I don't know if he's always getting the best advice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't think he's not a bad kid at all. He's like, I like him. I would take him. But I hesitate. Like we say, generational prospect. Yes, he's the best one to come down the line in a while. But everyone wants to compare him to Mahomes because he can throw from weird arm angles. And I'm sure, like, when you saw him for the first time, you saw it too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's hard
it looks like.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he's not Patrick Mahomes, right?
You can't do that. It's like, Andrew, you covered MJ with me. And when we would hear Baby Jordan or the Greek Jordan,
you laughed at it.
You can't compare anyone to Michael. You just can't compare anybody to Patrick Mahomes.
You cannot. And I just want Bears fans, like, both can be true. He's the best one to come down the pike in a while, but he's not Patrick Mahomes, even though he looks like they're not the same guy. But it's funny you mentioned Jordan. I brought up Jordan a lot on the air recently because I think Mahomes has that Jordan in him where it's, A, I'm not going to let my team lose. B, everyone around me is going to, their level of play is going to come up because it's almost like I'm afraid I don't want to be the guy that's known as the person that dropped the pass from Patrick Mahomes and therefore he didn't win. Like, all those guys, the shots are going in when Michael's, throwing you the ball in Game 6 or Game 7 because I'm not going to be the one that screws it up, right? Almost like a fear factor playing with him. And also, he's a killer of dreams. Like Buffalo.
Yes.
Buffalo. Or I mean, anywhere around the league. Like, there are all these teams that are like, we may never win because he's in the league. Like
close and late, especially.
Yes, and we're in Indianapolis. Like, Reggie Miller is Josh Allen. Like, think about it.
Right.
Like, there are all these teams that won't win because he rips your soul out of a franchise and a city.
Tom Brady's the most accomplished quarterback in the history of the game. Do you think at 6 years in, 7 years, but 6 seasons in, is he the best quarterback you've ever seen play?
See, we got into this a couple of weeks ago when someone said, well, if they win, this is on air, the topic bar said, if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, is Patrick Mahomes now the GOAT? And I'm like, since when is, like, doing half your homework actually doing the job? Like, Tom still has 7, Mahomes still has 3. No way. But Mahomes does things that only Tom did.
Right.
So I think eventually he may get there.
Going back to something that you said, too, you mentioned Washington. If the Bears get Caleb Williams and if Rome Odunze falls to them at 9 and those two pair together, is it an A-plus draft for the Bears?
I would think so, wouldn't you?
Yes.
I mean,
yes. And if you could somehow pry a second away from a team for Justin and find a tackle or a center or somebody else in second or third round. Now you're talking about three pieces to a puzzle.
Should we do one of these?
Enormous. I mean,
about,
camera. Look into the camera.
I'm rubbing my nipples right now. I'm getting combine nipples.
Yeah. But you can't do that on the NFL Network.
Can you do that ever on
the? You do that on the.
No, I've generally avoided that.
Yeah.
What if they took a tackle at 9? Right, you have your bookends.
Yeah.
It's a really deep wide receiver class.
That's great.
You came back and got the receiver later. I mean that would work.
He's still going to be rubbing his nipples
as well.
Very excited.
And then of course it's going to be now you beef up the O-line now that Justin's gone. I'm sure that would be the narrative. Right?
Absolutely, with some, with a loud minority.
I mean, think about it. You spent the 10th or 11th pick on Darnell Wright. Mm-hmm. You gave Nate Davis $35 million. I mean, they have made progress on that front.
DJ Moore.
Yeah, you've added DJ Moore. You gave Cole. Listen, if you don't like Cole Kmet, don't give him $12 million a year.
Right.
So, I mean. Year 1 was a disaster. Year 2 was a complete teardown. I have a tremendous amount of sympathy for Justin in certain ways because he's been dealt a bad hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we had Ryan Poles on, we talked about his experience being at Kansas City when they evaluated Patrick Mahomes and drafted him and then developed him, and he talked about infrastructure. Well, that's one thing that didn't exist with Justin early in his career.
Mm-hmm.
There was no infrastructure for him. From a coaching standpoint, he's went through 2 offensive coordinators in 2 years. They were in a teardown in year 2. He has been the unfortunate, recipient of poor timing. I don't think he's the world's greatest quarterback. I don't think he's the world's worst quarterback. But at this particular time, he just finds himself as a victim of circumstance.
Right. And it's not his fault. It doesn't make him a bad kid nor a bad football player. But I was talking to one of the talking head draft analysts who I respect immensely last night, and they basically said, listen, they use the word mediocrity. I don't know that I want to throw that on Justin, but they're like, are you happy with mediocrity, or do you want to take a swing at greatness? Take a swing at greatness, and that is simply hand in the card and take Caleb Williams.
And by the way, listen, they're not in the same situation that most teams are when they pick first overall. I'm not saying they're a playoff team right now, but they have 7 wins. Their roster's better than it was. So, Caleb Williams is stepping into an environment that's significantly better than most first overall picks will find themselves at.
Correct, which is exactly what the opposite of what his dad was saying last year in that GQ article is, why should the best player in college football have to go to a bad team at a bad organization? Because normally the team at the top is a bad team at a bad organization. That's not what this is. It is an organization and a team, I think we all agree, making strides and heading in the right direction. And then if you drop this piece in,
should be fun.
Yeah.
Should be fun. I'm hoping.
I know you guys
we're
want it
scorned. Well, totally. But I'm excited. I don't think I've been this excited about a Bears team in a very long time because, look, everything seems to be pointing in the right direction. Like Ryan Poles has done some really nice stuff. Caleb Williams is an exciting piece to this puzzle, one of the biggest pieces that you could ever add. I'm thrilled. I'm excited, but I'm also a little nervous because we've seen this.
Right.
Not the first overall pick with a quarterback, but we've seen the Bears tread into this territory and it not go so well.
So I'm curious. Last year, when they secured the first overall pick, like we've all heard the story, celebration and polls, like everyone. You guys were at the game, right? I've heard that. When it happened this year, was there excitement or like, oh God?
No, excitement.
Pure excitement.
Good.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, big time. And last year, I felt that nobody expected them to take the quarterback. It was, you need to give Justin another year. No, while they were looking into Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, it was, we're going to trade the pick.
Right.
And I know that C.J. Stroud turned and looked awesome, and people want to know, well, what did he see and what was the evaluation there? But I still love the haul that he got back. Mm-hmm. And if Caleb Williams turns out well, and then you get DJ Moore and you got a second-round pick and you got Darnell Wright, that turns out to be one hell of a trade.
One hell of a trade. Absolutely. And the idea that, hold on, people aren't doing they should have taken CJ thing, are they?
So Carmen and we were just in a text chain, Waddle, me, and Carm, and What Carmen wants to know is
if they misevaluated the quarterback class.
Did they misevaluate
Yes.
C.J. Stroud?
I mean, he went second. Like, I know there's a lot of revisionist history that, they wanted him in Carolina. I think some people did.
Yeah.
Whether or not the owner tipped the scale, who knows? It's not as if anyone looked at Bryce Young and said, this guy's awful. Like, no one, when they handed in the card, went, they are making the biggest mistake in the draft in 20 years. No one said that.
Right.
Like, if they claim they did, they're lying. At the same time, I don't think anyone thought CJ would come in and do this. Now, I remember sitting here last year, and we all said, like, just watch him throw, whether it's his deep ball accuracy, whether it's his balance. Like, he will put on a show. Like, it looks pretty. But I don't know that there were a lot of people pounding the table saying that Carolina's going to get this wrong if they take Bryce Young. I still think Bryce Young can play. I'm curious to see what they do, trying to build things around him in year number 2. But
I always felt
it's a high bar that CJ has set.
I always felt that had they had the opportunity to draft a quarterback of this class's caliber last year, it would have been a tougher decision.
Absolutely.
And they were kind of, I won't say saved, but it worked out for them. I think most people believe they did what they needed to do. Justin was in was in a year where they were still trying to evaluate him. You needed to fill a ton of holes. I don't think there's any regret up at Hallis Hall that they did what they did. We just want to make sure that their quarterback evaluation process is a good, clean one.
Yeah, and I think there's the Ohio State thing last year, too. Like, were you going to get rid of one Ohio State quarterback and take another Ohio State quarterback? I know that's low-hanging fruit.
That is terrible, yeah.
But how would that have played?
That's like saying if you like Drake May, you can't take Drake May because you just failed with Trubisky.
I understand.
You can't do that.
But in Washington, like, if they let's say we're picking 6, or let's say, okay, Drake May is there at 2. Sam Howell, they just had the other North Carolina quarterback. Those guys are like this, by the way, like best friends.
Sam Howell and Drake May?
Yeah.
Really?
And, like, to the point where, like, some people were like, well, you can't have them there. Like, you gotta, they wouldn't want to be there together. Like, get rid of,
Sam
do
Howell.
Sam
Bye.
a solid,
Yeah.
get Sam out of there, because he's going to sit there for the next 3 years watching his best friend take his job, and his career's like they.
That's
you
weird.
know what I'm saying?
That's weird.
But they're in that position.
Yeah. Hey, keep up the great
Thank
work.
you.
We
Likewise.
appreciate the friendship, and
Likewise.
Safe travels back to L.A.